Hey everyone, welcome back to the Intentional Guy podcast. It's been over a year since we've done an episode. And I need to be a little direct about something. That wasn't an accident. I disappeared. And today I want to explain why that happened. Because I think some of you, maybe even a lot of you, know exactly what it feels like when life knocks you sideways and your first instinct is to just vanish. A year ago, I thought I had it figured out. I was moving strong with this podcast, helping guys, sharing my story, and encouraging men to live intentionally. And then something happened that completely knocked me off course. Not what you might think, not falling back into old patterns, something from a completely different direction. And instead of handling it the way I've learned to handle things, staying connected, being honest, reaching out, I went silent. I isolated. Let me take you back 20 years, because to understand where I've been this past year, you need to understand where this journey started. 20 years ago, it was early morning, and there was a knock on my door. I went to the door and I opened it to find an FBI agent and an Indianapolis Vice Police cop. In their hand, they had search warrants. And in that single moment, everything I'd built, my ministry, my family, my reputation, came crashing down. The secret life I'd been living, the bad decisions I've been making for years, all of it was about to be exposed to the world. I wasn't just some guy either. I was a leader. I was in leadership, a youth pastor. People trusted me with their kids. They believed in me. They looked to me for guidance. So when everything came out, when my world fell apart, I didn't just hurt myself. I devastated people who had put their faith in me. And that weight, knowing I'd caused that kind of pain, was crushing. What followed that was a 15-year journey trying to find restoration. And I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It was brutal. I battled suicidal thoughts. I even made actual attempts to end my life. The shame and guilt that I felt was suffocating. There was mornings that I woke up and literally not wanting to exist. I remember lying in a psychiatric hospital, staring at the ceiling thinking, this is it. This is how my story ends. I'm that cautionary tale people warn their kids about. But here's what kept me breathing when I didn't want to. Psalm 34:18 says, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Even when I couldn't feel him, and there were long stretches where I felt absolutely nothing, God was there. Even when I pushed him away, when I told him I didn't deserve his help, God didn't leave. My restoration started with relationships. God strategically placed specific people in my life who showed me grace when I deserved judgment. People who invested time in this broken man when they could have easily walked away. And slowly, and I mean painfully slowly, healing started to happen. But here's what blew my mind. God could still use me. He took the very things that destroyed my world, the shame, the failures, the worst decisions I'd ever made, and he used them to help other men dealing with their own secret. Men who thought they were beyond help. Romans 8:28 promises, in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Notice, it doesn't say in spite of all things. It says in all things. Even the failures, even the absolute worst decisions, even the things we're most ashamed of. So last year, I thought I finally arrived. There had been 20 years of hard work, counseling, support groups, accountability, rebuilding trust. In fact, I've written 2 books about this journey. I started this podcast. I found forgiveness from God, from people I had hurt. And the hardest one, I found forgiveness for myself. I genuinely thought the major battles were behind me. But restoration isn't a finish line you cross. It's a journey you keep walking. And the enemy, he doesn't give up just because you've made progress. Ephesians 6:12 tells us, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil. The enemy studies us. He knows our weaknesses, knows exactly which buttons to push. And when the old tactics stop working, he adapts. Last year, he came at me from a completely different direction. There had been a relationship I'd been praying for years. A relationship that was broken because of my choices. I'd been praying for forgiveness and praying for restoration. Praying that one day we could rebuild what I had destroyed. That person reached out to me and they wanted to meet. Man, I was so hopeful, so encouraged. This had to be my answer prayer, right? Psalms 37:4 says, take delight in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. So I went to that meeting believing God was opening a door I'd been knocking on for years. That person looked at me and they told me they forgive me. Those words, I forgive you, I had been waiting years to hear them. But then came the next sentence. Even though they forgave me, they were not wanting to restore our relationship. I made it to my car before I completely broke down. I started crying, and I mean the ugly crying, the kind where you can't breathe. And I'm asking God, why? I did everything right. I changed my life. I've been faithful. I've helped so many other people. Why won't you give me this one thing? And I had to learn something really hard that day. Forgiveness doesn't always mean restored relationships. Just because someone forgives you doesn't mean they're obligated to let you back into their life. And I couldn't even blame this person. I caused the hurt. I broke the trust. They had every right to protect themselves. But understanding that didn't make it hurt less. That's when my old companion showed back up. Depression. Like a dark cloud settling over everything. And I started doing what I've always done when I'm hurting. I isolated, pulling away from everyone. At that time, I had lost my job due to my health situation, and that just made everything even worse because it justified me staying at home, staying alone. I didn't want to be around people who could hurt me, didn't want to explain what I was going through. I just wanted to disappear. But isolation was exactly what the enemy wanted. He wanted me paralyzed, silent, hidden away where I couldn't help anyone else and where no one else could help me. You see, I went through the motions of life. I pulled away from friends who cared about me. I still went to my small groups, but I put on a mask. I even pulled away from my wife, the one person who walked through everything with me. I was surrounded by amazing people. I go to a great church, but I was completely alone. And the worst part about that was exactly what I wanted. You know what the enemy whispered during those months? He said to me, see, even after all that work, you still lose. You're still rejected. You're still not good enough. All that change, all that growth, none of it matters. Why do you keep trying? But 1 Peter 5:8 warns us, be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. And he found my weak spot. See, it wasn't my past bad decisions anymore. I dealt with those. It was my deep need to be valued, to be loved, to have a broken relationship restored. When that door closed, he used my disappointment like a weapon to push me away from the very people who could have helped me. See, the enemy is not creative. He uses the same playbook on all of us. For me, it's always been isolation, making believe I'm better off alone, that no one really understands, that I can't burden others with my struggle, and that somehow I'm protecting them by staying away. But isolation kills the soul, and silence keeps us trapped in shame. So how did I get here? How am I standing in front of you today? Well, it was returning back to the men God had put in my life, the ones I'd been pulling away from. And here's the key. I had to be authentic. I had to be honest about my current struggles, about the fact that I was isolating, and the depression that had come back, about feeling like a failure even after all the progress I had made. And you know what happened? These men, they jumped right in. My friends, my small group from church, they didn't judge me. They didn't lecture me. They just showed up. I began to realize something crucial. I can't do life alone. I wasn't designed to. None of us are. Through my small group, I trusted other men to help me, really help me. And guess what? Many of them could understand because they too, at some point in their life, had done the exact same thing. They isolated. They pulled away. They thought they were protecting people by disappearing. And having those men walk alongside me, holding me accountable, checking in on me, refusing to let me disappear, that's what pulled me out of the darkness. See, Hebrews 10:24-25 says, let us consider how we may spur one another towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another. We need each other, especially when we don't feel like it, especially when the voices tell us we're better off hiding. So why am I back? Why am I standing here telling you all this? Because I believe there are people watching right now who feel completely alone, who are hiding in silence because they're terrified of being exposed, who thinks their past bad decisions, or even current ones, have permanently disqualified them from being loved, from being forgiven, from having a future. Maybe you're carrying shame from something you did years ago. Maybe you're dealing with something right now you can't tell anyone about. Maybe you're going through the motions of life, surrounded by great people, but feeling totally isolated. Maybe you're convinced that if people really knew what you were struggling with, they would reject you. I need you to hear this. You are not alone. Romans 8:1 says, "Therefore, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus." No condemnation. Not because we've earned it, not because we've perfectly cleaned up our life, but because of who God is and what Jesus did. This year we're doing something different with Intentional Guy. Yes, I'm going to keep sharing my journey, the setbacks, the victories, the moments I want to hide, and the moments I'm learning to be honest. But we're also going to hear from others, stories from people who've overcome what seemed impossible. Men who felt beyond hope but found their way back. Stories of redemption that will remind you that God specializes in taking broken pieces and creating something beautiful. Because here's the truth I've learned over these 20 years. We are not defined by our past bad decisions. We're defined by who we choose to let define us. And when we choose God, when we choose His truth over the enemy's lies, everything changes. 2 Corinthians 4:8-9 says, "We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed." Struck down, but not destroyed. You might feel knocked down right now. You might feel like you're barely holding on, but you're not destroyed. There's still hope. There's still a way forward, and you don't have to walk it alone. I want you to look in the description below this video. I'm going to include my email address, and I want you to reach out to me. And I'm serious about this. I will personally get back to you. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need to be cleaned up first. Just take that one step and reach out. Let's build a strategy together to help you move out of the darkness and into the light. I've been where you are. I know what it feels like to be trapped in silence, to carry shame that feels too heavy to share, to think there's no way out, but there is. And sometimes just knowing someone else understands, that's enough to give you the strength to hold on one more day. This year on Intentional Guy, we're exploring what it really means to live with intention. Not perfection, but intention. It's about getting back up when we fall. It's about being honest about our struggles instead of pretending we have it all together. It's about fighting for the life God called us to, even when it's incredibly hard. We're going to hear stories of redemption, real stories from real people who thought they were finished but discovered God wasn't done with them yet. Stories that will remind you that no matter how far you've fallen, no matter what you've done, there is always, always hope for restoration. Because that's what I desperately hope you hear today. That you are not your past. Your worst decisions don't get the final word. God does. And He says you're worth fighting for. So welcome back to Intentional Guy. I am so glad you're here. And I'm grateful to be here too. This year we're going to do this together. We're going to be real. We're going to be honest about the struggles. And we're going to discover that even in our darkest moments, even when we feel most alone, we are never beyond the reach of God's grace. Let's walk this out together.